Welcome to another episode of Dellet at Large, Aliyah Stories. Thank you for being part of this podcast. My name is David Levine. The podcast is called Dellet at Large, Aliyah Stories. And I started this podcast off about a year and a half ago when I made Aliyah. And I've talked about my journey. And I've now brought on some guests onto the show to talk about their journeys. And I want to introduce Hillel Fuld, who is an advocate, a tech writer, has been a fixture of the pro-Israel Hasbara scene, I would say, particularly over the past, well, certainly for me, over the past couple of years. So thank you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
So tell us about your Aliyah story. So you made Aliyah when?
30 years ago as a kid, I came here. I'm 46 now. So I came when I was 15, in the middle of high school. Quite an age, not an ideal age by any means. But I can tell you now, 30 years later, best thing that ever happened to me.
So what was it like? Let's go back 30 years. What was it like making Aliyah then? There certainly weren't the technical support that you might have now. What was it like?
Yeah, it was a very different Israel back then. I mean, first of all, I came in the middle of high school, so it's rough. But, anybody who lived here 30 years ago in Israel knows you couldn't get deodorant in this country. Like, you couldn't get tuna fish. It was like every American was bringing in, things that today, again, like orange juice. Like, I remember coming here and thinking, oh, man, I miss my Tropicana. Like, today, I go back to the States, I'm like, this Tropicana is nasty. No, Israel, it was basically a third world country back then. And today, it's paradise.
So what were the big adjustments that you had to make when you made Aliyah?
So the way it worked with me is I came when I was in 6th grade for a year. My dad had a sabbatical. So when you're that, young, you pick up language pretty easily. So I picked up Hebrew in 6th grade. And then when I came back in 10th grade, I already knew Hebrew. So Hebrew really wasn't much of an issue. But, new friends. I'll never forget going into math class. First of all, I'm in Hebrew, but years ahead of what we were studying in the States. So they're talking about words that could have been Chinese. So I didn't know what the heck they were talking about. So it took a little bit to get used to, but pretty quickly I integrated. I guess I'm a social person. So, I made friends and, I'm not going to lie. It definitely took a couple of years for me to say that I'm sticking around and staying here versus going back. But, again, 30 years later, by a huge margin, the best thing that ever happened to me in my lifetime.
So where did you live when you first made Aliyah?
I lived in Jerusalem, in what's called the German colony. It's middle of Jerusalem, in a place called Emek Rephaim. It's like a central street. Lived there, then I moved, it's like train tracks, old train tracks in Jerusalem. The other side of the tracks, literally, to a place called Baka, where my parents live now. And, it's I would say there's a lot of Americans there. And so I definitely had my crowd. And, it was, like I said, it took some time to get used to, I would say culturally, but I'm not going to pretend that I suffered, whatever. And again, today it would be infinitely easier to move to Israel. But even then, it wasn't like I was suffering. I had a good couple of years until I finished high school and then I went to the army and things like that. But, it took some time to get used to. It wasn't too bad, though.
So you went to the army and then after that you went to university here in Israel, correct? You went to Bar Ilan?
Yep, indeed. I studied political science in Bar Ilan.
And what did you do after Bar Ilan?
Well, I started work. I entered the market. I worked in finance for a little bit till I kind of got recruited into tech. And then, then the rest is history.
But what was that like in terms of coming in as an Oleh? Where did you feel like you had all the connections you needed or you were coming in a little bit?
By that time, by the time I finished high school and finished army, then, I was already pretty integrated into Israeli society. So college, I studied political science. So, the fact that it was in Hebrew at that point, again, wasn't really much of an issue. But, by the time I entered the job market, I would say at that point, I was, I guess, completely Israeli. It was no longer something that was, yeah.
And what would you say now for people who are thinking about Aliyah, given everything that's going on in the world? I know you're a very big proponent, especially now, of making Aliyah. So what do you say to people when they're thinking about it in terms of the challenges or in terms of the opportunities?
Well, yes, let's first define the target audience. Who am I speaking to? Am I speaking to someone Jewish, someone observant, someone...
Let's just say someone that's Jewish, maybe not necessarily even someone that's observant. So someone that feels connected to the country and wants to make the leap.
Okay, so the reason I ask is because if you're an observant Jew, it's a whole different argument. But if you're not an observant Jew, but you do definitely kind of respect where you came from, your heritage and things like that. There's, of course, that element of Israel being your homeland and, this is the place as a Jew that you belong. But putting that aside, I think anybody who's come here in the last, I would go as far as to say a decade, can tell you that Israel is just one of the most beautiful countries in the world. We're on every poll, we're amongst the happiest people in the world. The media portrays it one way. When you're here, you see that that's completely, could not be farther from the truth. And I have these conversations with people almost on a daily basis. Like I say to people, oh, you're visiting from wherever, how do you feel? And they all say the same thing. I'm infinitely safer here than I do anywhere else in the world. So there's that element. But, I don't think anybody should move to Israel and make Aliyah because of anti-Semitism. That's not the right reason. You shouldn't be running away from. But unfortunately, it's gotten to the point that anti-Semitism should most definitely be a catalyst, a trigger, because, I don't need to tell you things are getting really scary. And yes, I know the pushback, oh, but you guys had October 7th. You just got a, big terrorist attack. Of course, yes, I'm not denying that. And that's a valid question. But there's a fundamental difference between a mission that failed and no mission at all. And what I mean by that is there's an army dedicated to my safety. Now, that army failed on October 7th. Let's not sugarcoat it. But they still exist. The army still exists. It's still, its existence is to protect me. Whereas there, who's protecting the Jews there? I mean, you can no longer walk around. It's unbelievable. Like the words that I'm saying, that I'm about to say, I couldn't even imagine saying 10 years ago. Jews can no longer walk around with the Star of David. Like Jews cannot have a mezuzah on their doors in most places in the West. Can't walk around with a kippah. And still, my friends in these places are like, yeah, it doesn't affect me. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So, again, anti-Semitism shouldn't be the reason. The reason you should come here is because this is an unbelievable and a miraculous and a spectacular country. But if all of that didn't do the job, you should not have any, illusions that you're home over there, because it's become quite clear over the last couple of years that you are no longer home anywhere outside of Israel.
And if you're religious, what's the different conversation, I guess? Well, what else would you say to someone?
Well, this is a pattern that we keep repeating throughout our history. I mean, we had the story of ancient Egypt. We were slaves for 210 years and God, brought the 10 plagues and he's like, all right, get out of here. Let's go to Israel. And 80% of the Israelites stayed back in Egypt. What did they tell themselves? Just imagine what they told, because they were slaves. They were persecuted and tortured for 210 years. How could it be that they stayed back? I would imagine they told themselves, I'm Egyptian. I was born here. I'm not running away to some land of milk and honey. I'm going to stay here because I was born here. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born here. Besides, what? All Jews should go to Israel where we're going to be an easy target? We have to stay here in Egypt and lobby on behalf of the Jews, which is, of course, what every American Jew is saying today. And then we went into the desert. And famously, we sent 12 spies into the land of Israel. When God says, go in, we said, no, we'll send spies. And we send 12 of the biggest rabbis, heads of the tribes. 10 of them come back and say, don't go in. How could that be? These are 10 of the biggest rabbis. Why they contradict God? Again, what did they tell themselves? It's quite obvious what they told themselves. They said, we're in the desert here. We have a direct line of communication with God. We have food coming from the heavens and water coming out of rocks. Like we are very religious here in our little desert ghetto, in our borough park, in our Lakewood, in our wherever. To go into Israel and to build an economy and an army, I'd rather stay in the desert where I'm very religious. And God says, that's not your job. Get your butt into Israel. So it's the same narratives over and over again. Some of the American Jews or Jews outside of Israel are saying we need to stay here, maybe to lobby on behalf of Jews, and we shouldn't all be there. And some of them are saying, no, I brought my kids up here in Lakewood where we're surrounded by religious Jews. If you go to Israel, God forbid they're going to see a Jew with tattoos. I'm saying that obviously facetiously, right?
Yes.
But this is all very nice, philosophically, but forget philosophically. The Talmud literally says, point blank, that it is better to live in Israel amongst Gentiles than it is to live outside of Israel amongst Jews because, and this is what the Talmud says, because any Jew who lives in Israel is a person who has a God, and any Jew who lives outside of Israel is a person who worships idols. This is literally what the Talmud says. And it's not just the Talmud. I mean, even the quote-unquote non-Zionist Torah authorities of our generation, like Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who was a Bnei Brak Haredi rabbi, by no means was he a Zionist. When he was asked about moving to Israel, he was asked, if I'm a rabbi in America, should I really leave and stop teaching Torah there to come to Israel? And he said, a street cleaner in Israel is more righteous than a chief rabbi outside of Israel. So, if you're a Jew and you are somehow justifying not coming to Israel, my only question is, do you not keep Shabbos? Do you keep kosher? Since when? Who decided that Israel is less of an important commandment? Because it's not. It's the Ramban, Nachmanides says that if you're keeping the Torah outside of Israel, you're not keeping the Torah. You're just practicing. So if you're a Jew outside of Israel and not coming to Israel because it's hard, Whoever told you that being a Jew is easy? If Shabbos was hard for you, if kosher was hard for you, you wouldn't keep kosher. So, that whole argument is just so empty. And it's the script that keeps repeating ourselves. So if you're a Jew and a Jew with honesty and integrity, who's able to look at our history and our heritage, God's giving us an unprecedented miracle. People coming back to their home after thousands of years, and we're saying, no, we're too religious. You nuts? Have you lost your mind?
Listen, I hear you. I mean, it surprises me, particularly what's going on in New York right now and what I think is going to be happening in New York in a couple months. I don't understand how people are not getting ready to pack their bags because it's going to be
Listen, here's the thing. The famous, parable or whatever it's called about the man in the storm who gets on the roof and, the water's increasing and he's standing on the roof and he says, God will save me up here. And they say, but listen, get on this boat. We're going to save you. He says, no, God will save me. And then they send a helicopter. Get in the helicopter. He says, no, God will save me. And then he drowns. He goes up to God. He says, God, I don't understand. I believed in you. Why didn't you save me? God says, I didn't save you. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. You didn't get on. What do you want from me? And this is what's going to be the dialogue between a diaspora Jew who's going to go up to God after 120 years and say, God, we prayed for the ingathering of the exiles for thousands of years. Why didn't you bring us home? And God's going to say, I didn't bring you home.
Hello.
I sent you elal.com. I sent you nefesh b'nefesh. I made Israel paradise. You still didn't get on the plane. So I sent you anti-Semitism. I sent you a freaking Islamist, socialist Nazi to be the mayor of New York, and you still didn't get on a plane. What do you want from me? That's what God's going to say.
I completely hear you. Tell me some of the best things about Israel. So for someone that wants to come here and you say it's paradise, I feel like you love Tel Aviv because I've seen plenty of your videos in Sarona market. That's, I know, one of your favorites, right? So where else is one of your favorites?
Well, I mean, I'm going to sound like a little bit of a nut job when I say this, but walking in Jerusalem, and anybody who has been there knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say that the air in Jerusalem is like the air in no other place in the world. And the feeling and the energy of walking around in Jerusalem cannot be compared to anything. Literally, there's no such, the phenomenon doesn't exist anywhere else, right? But that's Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Those are the obvious places. Go to Caesarea. It's literal paradise. Go to Herzliya. I mean, I happen to be a car guy, right? When I came here 30 years ago, a Honda Civic was a luxury car. Go to Herzliya, you got Lambos and Ferraris, every other car, right?
Right. I was shocked by that. When I moved here and I started to see those cars, I couldn't believe it. I was like, where are these cars coming from?
It does beg the question, taxes are 100% here. So, who's buying a Ferrari for 2.5 million shekel?
Yeah, they had to be an Ola Chadash or something, then get it without the taxes.
But here's the thing, right? The thing is that, there used to be a long list of, it's called justification. I don't want to say excuses because that sounds judgmental. There used to be a long list of justifications for a Jew not to come to Israel. There was, I don't know, Hebrew, I have to cut my salary in half. How am I going to afford real estate? Where am I going to get a job? All of those things disappeared. You no longer need Hebrew. You can get along just fine in English. All the signs are in English. The business sector conducts itself in English. You do not have to cut your salary in half at all. In fact, you can make more money in Israel than you can outside of Israel if you're good at what you do and you're willing to work hard. There's real estate, endless real estate. Yeah, if you live in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, then you're going to pay an arm and a leg. But there's 5,000 different places you can live, even amongst Americans, and it's completely affordable. And you can get jobs here. All of those quote unquote excuses / justifications that once existed no longer exist. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm talking about on a collective basis, meaning if a person has elderly parents or a special needs kid and they have specific circumstances that they can't just get on a plane, I get that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about as a collective, right? For Jews to say, we belong here, we're staying here, you're nuts. It could not be any clearer that you are no longer home outside of Israel. So I don't see any reason that as a collective, Jews should not be coming home.
So let me ask you specifically about getting a job, and particularly in the tech field. So can you talk a little bit about what your job, what your role is, what you do in the tech industry, and for other people in the tech industry that want to move here, give me some tips, give me some actual tactics that people can use to get jobs.
So I'll start from the end and say that one of the things that I do just for fun, not for money, is people send me their CVs and when they're looking for a job. And when a company says they're hiring, I just send them a CV. And I've gotten over 700 people jobs that way, well over 700. I lost count long ago. Out of the 700, and this is a very important point, out of the 700, and again, I don't have the exact number, but I would estimate that over 400 of them did not have the skills that were written in the job description. What does that mean? That means that if you're in corporate America and you want to get a job, they're going to look at your CV. They're going to say, we need someone with 3 years experience. You only have 2 years and 10 months. no go. In Israel, that's just not how it works. Now, I'm not talking about working at Google in Israel. I'm talking about working at any startup, any company. You'll get an introduction through someone like me who's happy to facilitate, and I've done that 1,000 times. And I'll say, listen, I met this guy. I'll send a CEO a letter, an email, whatever, and I'll say, I met this guy. Here's this CV. He doesn't match exactly, but I'm telling you, he's a super talented guy. And the CEO will send his HR, interview the guy, and they'll hire him even if he doesn't have the exact job, requirements. And this is something that I've done hundreds of times. So, if you are a person who's resourceful and, again, a hard worker, you can get a job here in tech. You're not going to be an engineer if you don't know how to code, but in sales, customer success, marketing, customer support, and on and on. There's a whole long list. Admin jobs, even finance jobs, even like going into a VC at a lower principal level. There's a million things that you can do here, even if you've never done them before. And that is unique Israel. I don't think that exists, at least not in America or most places that I know of. If you don't have the job description, you don't have the requirements, you're not getting that job. In Israel, that's just not how it works. You can get an introduction, you can, work the system, and in 3 emails, you'll find yourself in an interview with someone who's interviewing you for a job that you don't really qualify for, but you think you can do.
Amazing. Well, I think that's the pioneering spirit, I guess, still at work here in Israel. Amazing. So before someone actually gets on the plane and they're getting ready to move, what are some of the things that you think that they should be doing? So they can be reaching out to you, but let's say they're not in tech. Let's say they're in something else, and maybe that's not your particular sphere. So what are the kinds of things that you think that they should be doing?
So I think what I'm about to say is not uniquely Israel. I think this is something that anyone who's deciding on their next career move should do, which is ask themselves not what they want to do, but what they want to accomplish. Meaning, after 120 years, you look back at your career and you make a big check. What does that check entail? Meaning, is making a lot of money what's most important to you? Is making the world a better place what's most important to you? Is enjoying my work what's most important to you? Is making an impact in the organization the most important? What are the things that you want to look back and accomplish? And why is that important? Let's give a few examples. Let's say, just for example, making a lot of money is most important to you. Great. So if making a lot of money is most important to you, then you're not going to work at an early stage startup. So you just disqualified that. And if you want to make the world a better place, then you're not going to work in gambling. And if you want to have an impact in the organization, then you're not going to work in corporates because you're not going to have an impact at Google. And if you want to enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to work with whatever. My point is, once you have that list of things you want to accomplish, then you'll be able to look at that and say, okay, based on these criteria, here's what I should do or here's what I should not do. That's something you should ask yourself right away, irrelevant of Israel or not Israel, but definitely if you're looking to come to Israel, because coming to Israel doesn't mean that you're going to have to continue doing what you've done. Like I just said, you can do things that you didn't do before, but what you need to ask yourself is what you want to do, not what you can do, but what you want to do. That's number one. Number two, I would say, before you get on the plane, start doing market research, right? So for example, if you've done that list of things you want to accomplish and you've decided, I'm just giving an example right now, you want to work in healthcare, in a company that has Series B funding. I'm just giving an example. Great. So now there are tools online like Startup Nation Central has a finder tool where you can filter certain things and find certain companies and then say, okay, here are 50 companies that meet my criteria. Let me research these companies. Let me learn about them. Let me learn who's the founder, who's the CEO, and start building, that database and maybe even reach out or ask for intros to people and say, listen, I love what you're doing. Love your company. I'm still in New York. I am making Aliyah. I'd love to have a cup of coffee when I get there. 9 out of 10 people will say, sure.
Right. Yeah, I found that as well. I was actually really kind of surprised as to how open people were to meeting, and they were very happy to have conversations.
Very Israeli. Everybody's very happy.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So as part of the podcast, what we like to do is come up with a word of the pod, an Israeli slang word. So I was wondering if there's an Israeli slang word that you use or that you've heard that you'd like to share with the audience. So something that's particularly useful for you or special.
Yeah. So it's interesting because there are certain words in certain languages that don't exist in other languages. So for example, in English, the word subtle, there's no word for that in Hebrew, subtle. Which
it's not surprising.
It's kind of funny, right? Because it's right, but there really is no word for that. The closest word in Hebrew to subtle is mi'udan, but it's not the same thing, right? Subtle is the art of saying something without saying it, right? It's just not a word in Hebrew. And there are other words like that, but there's a word in Hebrew that is used regularly that just doesn't exist in English, and the word is firgun.
Firgun?
Yeah. You don't know the word?
I don't know. I don't know the word. What is it? What does it mean?
Well, you learned something new today.
Yeah.
Firgun, I guess the closest translation in English would be to give props, to give props, right? Like the fargen lemishu, it means like, yeah, giving you props. Like, I don't know, this guy accomplished something, you give him firgun, you give him props, it's the opposite of being jealous of a person, basically, is to, prop someone up, make him feel good, give him props, slap him five kind of thing. And it's something that, is very, very uniquely Israeli. We all support each other. And yes, there are, divisions in Israeli society. I'm not denying that. But generally speaking, like, it's just something that you'll only find, I guess, in a family setting, which is very much how we feel in Israel. We're all one family. And yes, in families, there's sibling rivalry, there's fights. It happens. There's politics. But we all are family at the end of the day. And that manifests in a zillion different ways. Try having a flat tire on the side of the road in Israel. See how many people stop for you. 1,000 people will stop for you, right?
Right.
So firgun.
Firgun.
I'm very happy you don't know that word. You should, after the episode, Google it. You'll use that word regularly. I guarantee you.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking time today. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
You can follow Hillel on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Hillel Fuld, HILZFULD, on Facebook at Hillel Fuld, and on HillelFuld.com. That's it for this episode of Ola at Large, Aliyah Stories. I want to thank my guests, and I want to thank you. Thanks for listening. Please give a like, give a follow, and catch you next time.